So we talked about the evolution of comic books before, and we talked about this guy before, Benjamin Franklin. He's the guy that did the first political cartoons. Pretty sure this is one of his. Um, I find it really interesting that's a join together or die thing, because I see that a lot in separatist flags now. And I'm like, you missed the point of that cartoon completely. A single panel cartoon, by definition, is a cartoon that has everything going on within it in a box. All right, might be a rectangle, might be a square, but that is a single panel cartoon. All right, as we move on, we see another one. Now, back when political cartoons started, they didn't necessarily word bubble. They would just take and they would show, whatever somebody was saying off to the side, and the people reading it just assumed. Now, if there's one person in the frame, it works fine. But if you have two people in the frame, it starts to get confusing. Certain ones have absolutely no need for a word bubble. All right, they're just what they are. They're an image that makes a political point. Lincoln freed the slaves. Barack Obama's the first black president. You get the idea. There's a fist bump going on here. Whereas other ones need a word bubble. I cannot tell an alternative fact. I think we all know about alternative facts at this point. Billy, did you do your homework? Students in Shanghai, China have top test scores. Try texting him. Tap, 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 tap. That's the state of the world. I got to admit, I've actually cell phoned my kid from this computer to go, are you in class? You better be in class. So I understand technology as it is. But once again, we're still at a single panel. We're at a single panel here. Whoa, you two settle down. Now, what you need to start paying attention to with your word bubbles is generally the point off the word bubble goes to the character who is saying the phrase. And I know that sounds simple, but when I talk cartooning and animation, people would put word bubbles just about anywhere. So you have to kind of think about, if you're going to be using a word bubble, which in the next couple of weeks you are, who's it going to be pointing to? Does it make sense? Let's zoom down to here. What we have here is a 2-panel cartoon. Are we going to do a comic? We might do a couple panel cartoon is what I'm thinking we're going to do, is a multi-panel. Right here we have 2 panels. Now these two things are just comparing and contrasting. All right. You have Oscar for Best Picture here on the left. You have Oscar for congressional approval ratings on the right. You get the idea how Congress is doing. All right. 2 different things. Doesn't tell a story. Tells an idea, tells an opinion, isn't becoming a sequential story. So we get down here to Boondocks. I know a lot of you guys probably watched the Boondocks cartoon series. I never really watched it very much because I read all the cartoon strips. And when Riley would get beat in a cartoon strip, it was funny. When Riley would get beat in a cartoon, an animated cartoon where you could hear him scream, it sounded like child abuse. So some things didn't translate as well from the cartoon strip to the actual cartoon. But you've got Riley and Huey's grandpa there going, hello, Angelina Jolie. You don't know me, but I'm Robert Freeman of the Woodcrest Freemans. Big fan. So anyway, I hear you're adopting little black children. Well, I got 2 boys here. I was wondering if you're still in the market. This is a sequential 2-panel setup. So he says what he's going to say in the first panel. It's a close-up on his face. In the second panel, it pans back and we're looking at the rest of the situation. First thing, you don't know that the 2 kids, he's talking about his grandchildren. You don't know who he's talking about. He's just suddenly out of the blue able to call Angelina Jolie. But in the second panel, we pan back and we see him going, you know, I've had it with these kids. Maybe somebody else will take them. Probably doesn't mean it. Probably did it just to scare the children. But it's sequential. One panel has to follow the other. If you flipped them in out of order, wouldn't make any sense. And that's what comic books and comic strips are. They are sequential art. One panel leads to another panel. That line in between is time. Now, between these two panels, there's no time whatsoever. It's like a second. But in other cartoon strips, it's longer. I don't think I have an example here. This is a 4-panel sequential. It's not the guns that bother me, believe me. I believe in the right to bear arms, right? But it's frightening ideologies behind the guns that worry me. I say, let's keep the guns, true. Let's ban the conservative imperialists, capitalist oppressors who make the world such a violent place. Think about it. If we get rid of them, we don't need the guns anymore. You think they say the same thing about us? All right, so you have this political statement thrown up in 4 panels. What did he do rather than just show the same picture over and over of 2 people standing next to each other? He varied it up. All right. Here we see them walking from behind. Here we see a close-up of Huey. Here we see another back panel. In this first one, 3/4 view. Second one, back view. Third one, close-up. Oh my God, didn't we do all of that in our character sheets? Yes, we did. And here, a straight on. So that's part of the reason I had you guys do your character sheets, so you wouldn't just keep doing the same drawing over and over again and putting word bubbles next to it. Okay, cartoon word bubbles. This is the last bit. And then you guys are going to have some time to work today. Let's take a look here. You got all different kinds of word bubbles. You have kind of squared out ones, round ones, puffy ones. Each one kind of means a different thing. If I were to say which one of these 2 bubbles look like somebody is shouting, what would you guess? Anybody? The one on the right. All right, good job. Angles, it's brash, it's bold. You would probably put big letters in there. Stop, run, duck. Probably wouldn't be like 407 years ago. You probably wouldn't do that all in a shout. You wouldn't start a speech. Whereas this one could be anything. Could be a ghost. Could be somebody after they got hit by a car. Word bubbles are expressive. If we look at these 2, they don't really look like somebody's talking with words. What do you think these 2 are representing? If you ever read the X-Men, you would have seen this with Professor X a lot. What do you think these word bubbles are doing? It's not yelling. Doesn't look like you're speaking vocally. Anybody? No? Thoughts. They're talking to you with their thoughts. Yeah, like they're alerting somebody, like danger, danger, I'm sending you a message with my brain. Well, I can't do that, but in a comic book, somebody can. So there's 2 different ways there if you're going to have somebody thinking a thought to somebody. All right. Another way, if they're thinking a thought to themselves, the bubble, the puffy cloud word bubble. Now, placement of word bubbles are really important because they need to go in the order that people read. Now, in this country, we read left to right. If you guys read manga, sometimes you get the books printed the way they're actually printed in Japan, and that's backwards. So instead of starting with the front of a book, you actually read it backwards this way. And the word bubbles have to switch to know which one to read first. If you put your bubble down here, you end up reading this one before you read that one. So this one bad, this one good. I wonder when the next issue of Elephant Men will be out. Soon, I hope. All right? Those are side by side. You know, you read one before the other. The one thing I dislike about manga, and I've disliked this about comics like Spawn too, they do a lot of big pages. There's almost no words. You can flip through an entire book in maybe about 3.5 minutes, and you probably spent, $15 on that book. I feel slightly ripped off at times. Punctuation in lines in your bubbles are kind of important. Woman, without her, man is nothing. Woman, comma, without her, man is nothing. Depending on where you put the punctuation can change the entire meaning of it, of your line. So be careful when you're throwing out commas and stuff. When you're putting your commas down, you're doing your punctuation. Got to make sure that you put your commas where they need to be. If you look in the bottom here, if you do a word bubble, it's time to eat, comma, children, total sense. Number 2, if you leave out the comma, it's time to eat children. That's a whole different comic book, isn't it? Maybe that's a Walking Dead comic book. I don't know. I didn't think that zombies were all that picky. Letters within your bubbles also can change the meaning. You will always be mine. All nice and neat and in cursive, right? Almost feels romantic. Versus the Frankenstein lettering. You will always be mine. That just sounds like a restraining order needs to be issued. So these are all things that we need to start thinking about. I don't know what kind of capabilities you guys have on your Chromebooks. I don't know if you can cut and paste things. But as we do these pictures as we do these drawings and you take pictures of them, if you can take a clean picture of your artwork, and I'm telling you this because it will probably save you some time. If you can put your paper flat on your table, make sure you got some light on it where you're not putting a shadow on top of your paper because of the light. Like, don't put the light behind your head. It's not going to work. But if you can get a well-lit drawing, take a picture of it, and if you have a draw program or an edit program in your Chromebook, which I think you guys you might even be able to do it in Google Docs. You can actually take these bubbles from the net, from the internet, from the image search, cut and paste them, put them into your cartoon. Then you can go to your words and type on top of the bubble, which is way quicker, way cleaner, and way easier as opposed to what they had to do back in the day, which they would take and line guidelines for everything that would be written, and they'd have to do all their measuring, and then they'd have to bring out the rulers, and they did everything on a slight slant, so you had to have that angle right. It was almost like being a Dark Ages monk and having to hand write the Bible. It was miserable. But now, because of technology, we can cut and paste bubbles. We can flip a bubble if it isn't going in the right direction. You can take and do a transform on that. You can type right into the bubble. So you guys might want to think about that. Your other option is to do it by hand and letter it yourself, but you don't have all these options. I mean, I guess you could look up the fonts, but these are all different types of fonts that you can use. And this is just 15. I'm sure Google has probably at least 60. I have 1,500 on my computer because I do a lot of posters and a lot of advertising work. All right. Okay, that's it for today. I will see you guys soon. Remember, panels, bubbles, thought bubbles, all that good stuff. Stay out of trouble. If you can't stay out of trouble, don't get caught. See you later. Bye-bye.